to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. Glad to be here and glad to have you along. Today is Monday, August 21st, 2023, and it's going to be a wonderful program. I'm glad because I'm sitting here enjoying the heat of Minnesota, but my colleagues, my guests, are joining me from Bahia, Brazil. I don't know what the weather is like there, but they'll tell us in a minute. I'm excited, though, because this program in particular moves us towards the promise, the potential, the intent of the conversation. That is that we want to have global conversations, bicontinental, tricontinental conversations where we connect with our people anywhere around the planet and talk about common visions, common challenges, and ultimately about our resilience and our resolve, our capacity to become the authors of the future and to craft stories that show our people succeeding and winning, and that being the equal of humanity itself, succeeding and winning. Well, before I get into that, I want to remind you that no matter where you are, we'd like to have you. We thank you for watching the program. I want you to support the program by becoming a subscriber. You do that by going to YouTube /Insight News MN. That's one of the several platforms that we're streaming live on. But that's the one we're trying to use for accounting and ultimately monetization. We want to get 1,000 subscribers to start with. We're at about half of that now. And if you take a minute and go to YouTube Insight News MN and click subscribe, you put us one click towards that goal. We also want to remind you and thank our partners, reminding you that when it comes to COVID-19, the community is still at risk and the risk still exists. And even though the pandemic has been declared over in Minnesota, we know that in recent weeks, there's been an uptick in infections and hospitalization. So let's encourage each other. And to do that, we have to kind of commit to following the COVID-19 protocols, things like washing your hands, staying aware, generally prioritizing prevention. The idea is that together we can create awareness, we can encourage testing, and help everyone stay healthy. With that, please enjoy the show. And remember, be well, be healthy, and just be aware. Well, two great segments today. The first is talking with our education and culture editor, Dr. Irma McClaurin, who's with our editor of the Afrodescendientes project. They're both in Bahia in Brazil. And I love this. The time I did this before once where we sent our editor, Grant Williams, we sent him to Berlin to interview German Jews who were pursuing reparations from the German government, reparations that had to do with restoring or repairing the losses their community suffered, loss of life and property as a consequence of state policy. And state policy in that state during World War II was the anti-Jewish white supremacist Nazi policy. And so we had a conversation by having Randall Robinson at our site in North Minneapolis. We were promoting or broadcasting then from a restaurant called Lucille's Kitchen. And Grant was with these guests we had, interviewing them in Berlin. And it was a powerful thing. So we're moving in that direction again with having Dr. Irma McClaurin connecting with our editor, Maestre Yoji Senna in Bahia. Well, first of all, hello, guys. Good afternoon. Welcome. How are you doing?
Hello, everybody. I'm doing all right.
I'm doing well.
All right, well,
What do you say? Bon tarde?
Boa tarde.
Bon tarde.
Well, cool. And the other cool thing is that this conversation, the transcript of this, will be presenting in our Afrodescendientes section, meaning we'll translate this into Spanish, Portuguese, Swahili, Yoruba, and also into Somali, right? And French. So we're trying to show our people owning and expressing ourselves in a variety of idioms. Well, first of all, welcome, guys. Again, thank you for this special program, you joining us from Brazil. And we want to focus on Black women in Brazil. And the first question I have is, how do you think Black women in Brazil can navigate the complex power dynamic? How is that happening? And how has the dynamic of power influenced our people in Brazil? Yoji, you first, and then maybe Irma as an observer and participant. You tell us your take on that question.
Well, thank you. So first, I want to ask permission and apologize for be speaking for Brazilian women, being myself a male. But
Absolutely.
I want to just express something that I was casually, it's this string of conversations that one relates into the other. That I started talking to Dr. Irma, I think it was Fridays, about feminism or womanism or how Black females perceive feminism. And then I was talking yesterday to a friend of mine from here, um, and and end up the conversation being of the same subject, where she finds interesting many times that one of the buzzwords today is of empowering, and where she was saying that I always was surrounded by empowered women, uh, and and it's not a new concept. So women here, in certain ways, there is many areas they are uh, empowered, or you see them breaking the molds about what male roles are. So they are in position of power. For example, you find in mostly a worship house of Candomblé, the leaders are women, and the hierarchy that also run is women.
Mm.
And you find since long time uh, some women of the temple selling the acarajés that we eat in the street, or as I was trying to have the group visit a woman that she's like the the boss iron worker who does gates and all this kind of stuff. So um, so in Bahia in itself, the woman seems to me, and also, for example, we have historical figures that is um, um, given to us in the education, like Maria Felipa, that Dr. Irma also asked me today, right? Maria Quiteria, women, for example, Maria Quiteria, that was a woman that in the War of Independence of Bahia, she um, was a combatant, became known to be a woman, and even in this way, still she got accepted and got condecorations and everything. Maria Felipa was the leader of in the same independence war. She was a woman that she collects uh, sea fruits, you know, the shells for her form of sustainment that's still today used by a lot of women. And she was also the leader of resistance against the Portuguese in the island of Itaparica. So still today, you find an attitude of of this rebellious uh, taking position of authority by women here. That's why I see, you know, a lot of, for example, is the leadership. Many of them, you know, classically they would have the job of the domestic employees, right? And with that would come a lot of situations that were difficult to deal. So many chose to be clothing washer, lavadeiras, or so. In this in itself was them being leader of this very big family, or the sellers of acarajés, for example. that, for example, are women that are known to achieve wealth in certain and economic stability, those that are the sellers of acarajé. So I see this. To me, I see something. There are positives, but at the same time, there is a blatant cases of feminicide, as we called here. Homicides towards women are called feminicides, and the violence against women also is alarming. Um, but the reality, it's a little bit different than the one that we are used in the US.
Before you answer, Irma, let me share this article that I think you sent or something pulled up. And it's an article headlined, says Murder of Black Community Activist 72 in Brazil prompts calls for action. And it's about, it's just the same person you're mentioning, Maria Bernadette Pacifico, a woman whose son was actually killed in 2017, but she was killed by gunmen in her home in Bahia, where you guys are right now. This is an article that was published today, Monday, the 21st of August, 2023 at 6 in the morning Eastern Time. And it says human rights organizations in Brazil are clamoring for justice following the murder of a Black community activist who had been receiving threats. Maria Bernadetta Pacifico, a community and religious leader in the Pitanga dos Palmares, Colombo, an Afro-Brazilian settlement of descendants of escaped slaves in the northeast state of Bahia, was killed on Thursday evening. The 72-year-old, known as May Bernadetta, Mother Bernadette, had spent years demanding answers for the unsolved murder of her son Fabio Gabriel Pacifico, who was gunned down outside the community school in 2017. She was killed when two men wearing helmets entered her house and reportedly fired more than a dozen shots at her face. It is an immeasurable loss for the Colombo movement. She was a warrior. She was a fighter. She fought for human rights, everyone said. Sandra Maria Andrade, the executive coordinator of the National Colombo Association, CONAC, of which Pacifico was a representative. The article goes on to say the murder has been condemned by national and international authorities, including the president, Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva, and the UN's Human Rights Regional Office for South America. Both the federal police and the Bahia State Police are investigating the death. I'll stop reading that. The story's available online. But Irma, maybe fill in the backstory to the degree that you can, and Yoji come in and talk about this particular atrocity in the context of the emergence of power and the threat, the cost of power for Black people, Black women in particular. Irma, why don't you respond first, if you would?
Yes, what I want to do is set the context for why I'm here.
Please.
I'm here with a Brazilian immersion experience that's being led by one of our correspondents, Esmera Humori Davis. And it is a group of Black women, many of whom are spiritual leaders, faith-based leaders, retired. We range in age from a young college student who's here with her mother to an 86-year-old woman who they've been active both in their community as academics, as artists, as ministers, pastors of churches, social justice organizations. And so when we have met with women in Brazil, it has been on that level of asking the question, how has faith guided you? And I will be adding to my article that I'm working on now, in which I talk about powerful Black women in Brazil. I want to reaffirm or co-sign on what Yoji talked about, which is the fact that there is tremendous power among Black women that goes back to the historic times. Black women were very much involved in rebellions against slavery. After that, they have been leaders in their community. And at the same time, they've also been targets, which we see. And some of that has to do with gender. Some of it also has to do with the spirituality. What I am finding is the way in which the celebration of African religion, African spirituality, the celebration, the worshiping of the Orishas has been a source of power, whether we're talking about women who are beyond Beyonces, and Yoji can correct me with the pronunciation, street vendors, or people who are in fact hip hop artists. Some of them are both hip hop artists and attorneys. Some of them are priestess or initiates in the faith of the Orishas. And in all of this, what I have heard is as women tell their stories, and we've been listeners, not contributors, but listeners and consumers and absorbers of those stories, is that as they hit some adversity, it is their Orisha who shows them the way, that guides them on their path. And so and that has led to, for some people, being isolated from family members who may practice a different faith, particularly evangelical faiths. Sometimes it has made them the target if, in fact, the communities that they are leading sit on prime territory. And I think Yoji can add some context that the person who passed, who was murdered, was not only a spiritual leader, but she was also a political activist. So she was working both within the spiritual realm, but she was also working within the political realm in supporting and advocating for her community. And she was the leader of a very large community. And that community sits on land that now developers see as being very valuable in that sense. And because of that, a lot of the Columbos are very much at risk in terms of people wanting to remove them at this point in time. And this murder has really laid a burden. We heard people in the streets. We've been hearing that there have been protests, but also a celebration of who she was, and the hope that there will be some justice for her.
No voice.
Al, I think you're muted.
I was muted and I was saying, Yoji, jump in, please. Continue the conversation. Uh, Talk more about the woman that was just killed.
Okay. As Dr. Irma is saying, this woman has superseding roles. She was an Orisha, a priestess. She also was the leader of the Quilombo, and she was a former secretary for racial equality of, let's say, the county, and in part of a national committee about Quilombolas communities. So the Quilombos are the maroon communities that they have a status similar to indigenous tribes. So, and it has been one of the issues, the controlling of the land where they right now are uh, settled. And imagine that those communities started in the time of the colony. So at the time they were very far away from what was going on. And today, as the city grow, it's almost one of the neighborhoods. So the particular land of Mãe Bernadette, she was over 860 acres, hectares, sorry, of land. So it's a considerable amount of land with forests, rivers, water springs. So, and it's in the metropolitan area of Salvador. So her son was also has been killed already 6 years ago. That murder happened in a certain way. Remember, Dr. Irma was in the night over that we left the visit that we have to Casa Branca, that is the oldest terreiro here in Salvador, that we talked about violence against people of African religion, and
Yes.
many times was about religious intolerance. In many cases, were also land disputes. The temple that we visit in Salvador, they also are being encroached by, land developers or just people that plainly invade land and decide to build to make a profit. So going back to Mother Bernadette, her case did cause a commotion, a national commotion, as even the UN having released a note. And the fact is, she was killed also when she was under police protection. So, because she had requested already before, because of the case of her son being killed, and because she was receiving threats. So there were 7 cameras installed in her place, but guess what? Just 4 worked, and they don't know if they can have the image recorded. And the other thing that's difficult sometimes to us to equate is that this is happening in a state that is governed by a left party. Is governed in the last 15 or 20 years by the party of the workers, that is Lula's party, but is the most violent state in Brazil, not only in homicides in general, but also in homicides provoked by the police. So, uh, and since what they kind of figured out that this was not religious intolerance, but land encroachment, land dispute, people trying to take over, it's pretty kind of easy to find who sent the pistoleros to execute her. She was shot in the face. So they entered the house and asked her grandsons to go in the room, and she challenged them, "Is this a robbery?" And then the answer was they shoot her in the face. So, and as we said, somebody said in TV today, that was a message. Her murder was a message to all the people that work in the Quilombos movement, all the people that work in the land reform movement, to shut up, and at the same time, they are having the message back that when they fell one down, many more comes up. So the repercussion is great, and something probably gonna have to be shown. And at the same
And you,
token, I just want remember that we talk
mhm,
about this statue of this other Yalorisha that was vandalized a few months
mhm,
ago,
mhm.
and it was re-inaugurated last week. And yesterday, guess what? It was vandalized again. So a case of religious intolerance. But this time they haven't camera because they installed camera. But the statue has been just re-inaugurated last week after so many months in reform because they put on fire. And last night they caught somebody vandalizing again. And that is a
You know,
case of
I think it's important for people to understand that uh, African spirituality is not just a marginal thing among Afro Brazilians. It is very central to their identity and to their history and how they see themselves. I think it's also important for U.S. audiences in particular to realize that the entire country of Brazil is bigger than the entire continental United States. I don't think we really understand that until we begin to see. And just Bahia, and maybe Yoji, you have the numbers in terms of the population, but it is huge. So when you're talking hectares of land, you're talking about thousands of acres. And as Yoji pointed out, that at one point they were remote, they were up in the mountains, they were up in the hills, they were far away. But as these cities develop and expand, then they begin to encroach on, in fact, the land that was sacred land, where Maroons lived, where people were isolated. They were able to practice without persecution. And there's still Colombos that are further away from the main city, but even they have had to make sure that they have the correct paperwork, that they are registered, because there is an attempt to take the land. And this is really not any different from what happens in, say, Belize or in the Honduras, where Garifuna women who have been the keepers of the land have been murdered. Not in Belize, but in the Honduras, Nicaragua, in order to send a message, as they say. And at one point, I think it was Nicaragua, where a mother and her daughter were both murdered, Garifuna women, because they were considered to be obstacles, to this land development. So it's a combination of religious intolerance coupled with this capitalist quest for expansion.
Exactly.
Irma,
You
take
have
a
no
minute and
question.
talk more about your project or your 2-week study group. I'm fascinated about the people you've talked to, people you've met, and
Oh
what
my
kinds of outcomes.
goodness.
Take some time and stretch out.
Well, the people I've met have been amazing. These are women who have been moving and shaking things for a long time. As I said, we have a young college student who's here with her mother, who is a theater performer. And these women have been at the top. One person runs a nonprofit that's connected to the United Nations. People have traveled all over the world. They have engaged in social justice work or restorative justice work within their faith-based communities, churches, and many of them have been college professors. So I'm finding sort of kinship, and the more that we talk, the more we begin to realize that we know people who know each other. It's like, well, do you know that person? It's like, yes, I do. And so what I've been doing is more sort of, because I don't speak the language, we have a great interpreter, Felipe Nunez, and we have a sort of cultural guide, who is with us as well. And she has taken us to meet with these women. And so we've actually gained access and sometimes have had an opportunity to ask questions that generally the everyday tourist does not get to ask. And people have been very straightforward with us, telling their stories. And sometimes the stories have been of hardship. And then they say, and then my Orisha spoke to me. And it's as if it opened a door, a pathway for them to know exactly what they needed to do. And what we found, what I've discovered is that being spoken to by your Orisha is not based on age or seniority. Someone very young can receive a message and find a path, and then someone who has been sort of in the group for a long time or practicing doesn't receive that message until they're like in their late 60s or 70s. So there's no kind of order to it. It just depends on whether, when, and where your Orisha speaks to you. But there is a sense of powerful sisterhood. And as we've gone to these different, we went to the Bayanis memorial, they call it, its museum. The women themselves have gotten this funded. They're the ones who take care of it. They're the ones who guide tourists and guests through it. The same with the Theodoras, is that it is the women who have made sure that these places are protected. And that's just very powerful to see. So it's been sort of a communion of spirit and connection. And I'm hoping in the photographs that I will send with my story that people will see what I call the power of the faces of the Black women in Brazil, because they run a rainbow, but they're all very centered in their sense of connection to their African ancestry and their African spirituality.
So, Irma, what do you see as a similarity of the retentions of the understanding of Orishas in African Americans? The Orishas are publicly known and celebrated in Brazil, but we have a spiritual tradition among African Americans that is sort of beneath and within, intertwined in our experiences, whether they be in Catholicism or Protestantism, particularly Baptist or Pentecostals. So my question is, as you are traveling in Brazil, what is that reminding you of, if anything, in your travels in United States? That's question
I
number one.
would say it reminds me of loss. It shows me, because we just went past statues of the Orishas in a lake that used to be a dam. And there are these huge statues in the middle of the lake, the kind of statues that you would think you'd see of like saints, or Jesus. These are orishas, and they're very central, and they're huge, and they're celebrated. And so for me, it's like this is the past that I've lost. And yes, there may be aspects of it woven, but in Brazil, it is overt. It is in your face. The murals,
Exactly.
the figurines that you see are very much rooted. And people, there is a
Yoji, go ahead, jump in.
right, but
Run,
but in
run.
truth, the fact, the Orisha, the Africanism is very powerful and very overt.
Okay, we're going to be on tomorrow again, right? I
Yes.
think we're going to be back
Ron
tomorrow.
DeSantis would have a problem over here,
Okay.
suppressing information.
Okay, listen, Dr. Irma McClaurin, our education cultural editor, Yoji Senna, our editor of Afro Descendientes, thank you both for this wonderful conversation. And I want to dig more tomorrow when we talk with our live broadcast on KFAI into uh, uh, your 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 examinations of what it means when our people here, Irma, get a chance to go to Belize or Jamaica or Colombia or Brazil. How does it begin to open our eyes to the loss that you've described, right? And if we are able to begin to recapture and rediscover what was lost or hidden, what will it mean for the future that we are obligated to create? Well, with that, I'll stop and thank you both, Dr. Irma, Mestre
Obrigada.
Yoja. Thank you. All right, good. You
Obrigado
got
também.
Portuguese. All right. Thank you so much, guys. I'm Al
Okay.
McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane, special program with two of my illustrious colleagues, Dr. Irma McClaurin and Mestre Yoji Senna, joining us from Bahia in Brazil. Got a more wonderful program, and I just want to pivot here to bring in my next guest, and he is Jordan Bora Nelson, and he's the new president of the MAD DADS organization. Brother Jordan, good afternoon. Welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. How you doing, man? Unmute.
There it is.
There we go.
All right, I'm doing good. Good afternoon. Thank you, Al. Thank you for having me on.
Well, thank you for being here. You know, MAD DADS is an important organization, and you, I think, are going to be the second or the third executive director for the
Yeah.
organization. Take a minute and tell people who you are. First of all, what's your story, how you've come to this position as the leader, executive director of MAD DADS here in town.
Yeah. So I am the third executive director, 25 years. We celebrate our 25th year this October 3rd. And man, I think it just came from a lot of my past, my history, things I've been through. So I grew up South Minneapolis, I'm a South Minneapolis kid. Really, I'm a Lake Street kid. Grew up at Powderhorn Park back when the parks used to have daycare. I don't know who remembers that, but them were the good days, man. So I grew up running up and down Lake Street, running up Powderhorn Park, seeing the Mad Dads. My brother actually went to one of their parenting classes when he ended up having a child while he was in high school. His girlfriend got pregnant at the time when he was a senior, so he went to one of their fatherhood classes. Um, and then just throughout the history, I ended up though making some mistakes, and making decisions I shouldn't have made, and ended up being incarcerated for over 8 years. And then after that incarceration, well, I could say during that incarceration, I found my faith. I started reading my Bible, found faith in that, and then I came home. And when I came home, I just wanted to continue that journey of change and transformation, but I wanted to be able to give back to my community and be able to give other people the opportunity and show them like change is possible. You don't have to stay stuck in that rut that some of us stay stuck in when we grow up in certain conditions and environments. So I started out, became a minister at Shiloh Temple International Ministries. I was there for a few years doing community outreach. Um, did some youth ministry. My wife and I started a program called You Matter Minnesota. And that is where we were just walking up and down Broadway Avenue in North Minneapolis and downtown in South Minneapolis, feeding people, talking with people, praying with people, just doing a lot of outreach. And we still do that now to this day, actually. Then in May 2020, which is a crazy story, May 25th, 2020, we got the permission to be able to start our own church at 12 p.m. on May 25th, 2020.
Hmm.
7, 8 hours later, George Floyd gets murdered.
Wow.
So
Wow.
we instantly it was like, man, it was crazy. But we were able to mobilize, and we had a free grocery store and resources for about 7 weeks across from the burned down third precinct, which it spoke to my heart because I grew up there. So I knew the third precinct. I knew that target, that was my community. So we were there for about 7 weeks. Then we had our first service in July. Fast forward a few more years, I'm in a class, it's called Rising Community Leaders. I meet John Turnipseed. Well, I had met him before, but just in passing. But then I'm in this class. I learned from him and Art Erickson in the class. And then John just emails me one day and says, "Hey, I think you'd be a great fit to be the executive director of MAD DAD."
Just like that, boy.
Yep, and here we are.
Mm, mm, mm. Well, what a great story. We got a couple of videos, I think. Let's do one of the two videos. Which one should we do first? Two
let's
videos or one?
let's do the one of who we are, because we're doing some new things now. And I think it's important for the community to see some of the new stuff.
Okay.
Offenders. So youth ages 15 to 24. What we do is we patrol the streets of Minneapolis in a few different areas, central neighborhood, downtown Minneapolis. I'm just trying to make the community a better place by providing resources for mental health, addiction, homelessness. The neighborhood that we patrol is we work with people who will be deemed like the most violent offenders. So youth ages 15 to 24, people who've been shot before, people who've been to jail for some sort of violent crime or felony assault. What we do is we intervene and conversate with them and build relationship with them to try to kind of get them to see that there's another way to live. Like, you don't have to live this life of violence and risking your life every day. We serve the underserved. We employ people who would be deemed unemployable. We employ people who other companies or organizations won't take a chance on. We believe that everyone is employable. We believe that everyone should have that second chance, whether they're a felon coming home from incarceration, whether they're recovering from addiction and they need a job.
We just give the community hope, really, like just to see that somebody actually does care about the stuff that's going on.
That's a great testimony. And so let's give people the MAD Dads. You said 25 years old. What's the story? Why and how did MAD Dads come into existence?
So it's actually a pretty it's a crazy story. So in 1989, Eddie Stanton and a couple other guys, Eddie's son actually was shot. And through that act of violence, Eddie wanted to, he wanted to retaliate. He was upset, he was frustrated. But the history is his friends, they all sat down, they talked about it. They had wanted to produce good in the community and stop the violence. And so they just sat down and they talked and they said, you know what? We don't have to retaliate, but we're mad. So through that frustration of being mad about the situation, they just said, you know what? We're MAD Dads. And then that's where the name started in 1989 in Omaha, Nebraska. In 1998, the chapter was brought up here by our first executive director. And when the chapter came up here, then it kind of just did a lot of the same work that Eddie and everyone had started in 89, which was community outreach, going out into the streets, trying to stop the violence. I know at one point in Omaha, history says that there was about 400 people walking the streets of Omaha, Nebraska on a Friday, Saturday night. And so Minneapolis heard about that, VJ Smith and a few others, and they went down to Omaha, got some training, learned what they were doing, and then brought it back here to Minneapolis to try to stop a lot of the violence and the drug dealings. And anybody who's from the city knows that 1996, it was when Minneapolis was called Murderapolis. So it was right around that time when there was a lot of murder and a lot of violence happening.
Okay, and then what would you say has been the impact of MAD Dads over the years? I can tell you that, I think I'm probably very average, but it's always reassuring when I would see Mad Dads brothers in the skyways or downtown, or at events or at crime scenes, sort of being there to calm things and calm people down. But also when there was a crisis on public transportation, I think Mad Dad stepped in a major way in riding the buses between the cities and buses out to Mall of America. I think they were also involved with the rapid transit. I'm not sure, but I know that the community turned to Mad Dads to try to figure out a way to, dissuade the continued emergence of dysfunctional behavior. Our people hurting our people. Talk about that.
Man, so yeah, the buses and the trains, those were the peace buses that we started, and it was statistically proven that when we were on the buses, that violence dropped by 35%, and drug use dropped by around 60%. So we started the peace buses, and then like a lot of stuff that we did was just
hold up. How bad a
Yeah.
problem is drug use on the public transportation? And let me tell you my story again.
Yes.
I generally don't ride, but I used to every now and then when I'm going to a Twins game or a Vikings game, I drive downtown, park downtown, and take the train from First Avenue up to the Viking Stadium. And it was something fun to do, but I was surprised to see people firing up on the train, especially coming back from a game, and with total disregard for anything, and then some of the energy was really aggressive energy as well. So how big a problem? And I know of stories of people getting beat up on the buses. So tell me how big that problem is, how big it was, how big was it?
It's a huge problem. Every day our team we're out here, and every day we're stopping people from using drugs on the buses, and on the trains, or at least on the platforms. I know one incident where our team was asking someone to not use drugs on the bus because there was children on the bus and telling them they got to get off, and this individual got mad and pulled a gun out. They ended up getting off of the bus and walking away, but they ended up also saying some, calling our team some pretty profane names. But the end result was they got off of the bus. But it's a everyday problem. We cleared a train platform out on 35W and Lake Street. So we have a group where we walk from 4 p.m. to 12 a.m. Those were the orange shirts that you saw in the video. And every night, Monday through Friday, we're clearing that platform. And we're airing it out. We're turning on the vents or the air system so they can get all of the smoke out. It's pretty bad. I would consider it an epidemic right now, especially with the fentanyl, because whether they're popping it or they're smoking it, somebody's using it in some way, shape, form, or fashion.
And so what does the community need to do to support your work? First of all, what's your vision? How can Mad Dads best achieve the value that it seeks to bring to individuals and families and community? What is that you want to provide to our community?
Yep. So a huge part of our vision, it's a three-pronged approach. So we have our three teams. It's our core team, and that's our team that's been doing the work for 25 years, passing out resources, providing people with places for addiction and recovery, homelessness, jobs. But then we have our VIP team, and then that's the team where they're focused on violence interruption and intervention and prevention. And that's more trying to stop the gun violence, building relationship in the community. So if there is a violent encounter, to where we can have the information to where we can try to go to whoever is responsible or the person the violence happened to and say, hey, how can we prevent the spread of this? And then there's our Youth Empowerment Club. So in 2021, I founded an organization called Youth Empowerment Club that we decided to make the youth division of Mad Dads. And that focuses on mentoring young people in middle school and high school, and getting them mentors, but then also providing them with access and opportunity to career fields and technology. So when we're talking about vision, to have like a safety center and a safe space where we can encompass all of these three different things, but we're also able to have a space where people can come in. Like a great example, on Saturday at our backpack drive, a woman says, hey, I just want to take a shower. What if we had spaces and places where people knew it was safe, it was neutral, and they could go in here, and this is where they can go to, kick their feet up, relax, have a conversation, and we can start trying to create those elements of positivity, change, and to show them that there is a different way. So we would love to be able to be back on the buses, to be able to be back on the trains. We do it now, in certain incidents and circumstances, but just to have a core place where community knows this is the place we can go as community to find resources, to be safe, and to really truly get some help.
What does it take to fund an organization like Mad Dads? What can the community do to help support uh, any initiatives you have? Because you're hiring people and you're
Mhm.
providing incomes for people. How do we support that in the community?
Spread the word. Spread the
Mhm.
if we're out here and you see us and we're doing a great job, spread the word. Let everybody know the great job that we're doing, the work that we're doing. Excuse me, follow us on social media. You can donate if you go to our website. There's links to like Cash App and Venmo and stuff like that. Because it is true, we do hire people. We hire people coming from incarceration, and even people who just, man, I want to change. I want to turn my life around. So we put them through a little bit of tests and we talk to them, see if they're, really changing. And if they are, we give them a job because at the end of the day, income does change some people's perspective on what they
Mhm.
should be doing with their life. If I want to put the drugs down, I still got rent to pay. So if
Mhm.
I put the drugs down, how am I going to pay my rent? So it's like,
Mhm.
well, look, we'll hire you, let us help you out. It may be a slower process and not as much money, but you're going to be free and you're going to be
Mhm.
doing some good work.
Mhm. That's wonderful. And any particular turnaround stories that you've seen since you've been there? Any stories that let you know you made the right decision to take the helm of the organization?
Oh yeah. Um, man, let me see. I got to think of the right one because I don't want to put one out there that shouldn't
That's
be
right.
said.
That's right.
Um,
Don't compromise anybody, but just speak in
yeah,
generalities. The spirit of it. Yeah.
in general, I've seen brothers who, like with the orange shirts who you saw,
Hmm.
I've seen brothers who went from saying, man, I never thought I could have a job doing good in my community because I did so much bad. And now I'm out here 40 hours a week trying to change that and I'm doing good.
Mm.
And they're built, and the same people who they used to know when they were in the street are the same people that they're out there able to help now to talk to them about changing. The concept of having our team being able to do a lot of the details that they're doing and having like a little kid one day just walked up to our team about 4 or 5 months ago and she made a piece of art with a heart on it and it just said I love you Mad Dads and it had her name on it.
Mm.
And it's stuff like that, organizations, companies just calling us out of nowhere like, hey, your team is doing such a great job, we really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. Like those stories mean a lot to me because we've done a lot of restructuring. We do have a completely different team. We have a lot of new people, but everyone is just doing an amazing job. So I love being able to show up every day and hear those reports and celebrate all the work that's happening.
I think we have another video, don't we? A second video. What was the second video about?
The
We're
second
doing.
video was kind of a little bit about my life story.
Let's show that. Let's check that out. Okay.
We were already doing
Here we
community
go.
outreach through the church that we attended. That's my wife put the hat on there. In the first 6 weeks of Nelson, executive director of MAD DADS of Minneapolis. Before I started at MAD DADS, we were already doing community outreach through a church that we attended, and then we founded a church, my wife and I, in 2020. In the first 6 weeks of that church was a free grocery store across the street from the third precinct that burned down. I actually am from the neighborhood that our headquarters at Mad Dad's is in. My brother went there with his first child, went to their father program that they had. And I guess you could say, like, I grew up not making the best decisions. I grew up getting in a lot of trouble. Eventually, it led to me making decisions of running the streets, running with the crowd of people. I don't like to use the term wrong crowd. I used to, but then I thought about it. Everybody just needs some help. Doing things I shouldn't have been doing led me to doing 8 years in federal prison. And that was a huge experience for me, because through that experience, I ended up finding faith in the Bible and in Jesus Christ. I never believed in God before that. I just believed in myself.
What do you think about when you listen to that yourself talking about your story? What, as you're watching that, what are you thinking?
Man, I never saw this in my life. Where I'm at now today, pastor in the church, executive director of MAD DADS, being able to help and provide so many resources to our community and help so many people. It's my story. I tell it all the time, and it still always amazes me. Even when I listen to it, even when I hear those words come out, like, man, this is something I never thought, never dreamed of. And when I say dream of, not most people use that in terminology of like a famous movie star, rapper, or actress, or whatever the case may be, which is fine. But like for me, never dreamed. Like I never dreamed we'd be able to help this many people, and we still have so many years to go. So like it just blows my mind.
Brother, I often ask my guests to share if they would like to, whose shoulders they stand on. And typically I raise the question, it could be people in the community. You've mentioned a couple of great people already, VJ and Brother Turnip Seed and Art Erickson, great people in the community. But I often ask our people to talk about your parents and your grandparents and your people. And so to the degree that you see yourself as part of a stream of continuity, as part of an eternity, talk about your lineage. What makes you Jordan Bora Nelson today?
Man, that's a great question. My mother, my father, my mother, she was, man, I remember watching her grow up. She was a part of a group that was like against the war in Iraq and military expansion and like it. And she would go to protest, and she always would protest against racism. So I'm biracial. My mother's Caucasian, my father's African American. And she would always go to these protests, and she would always be in support of like equality and equity. And she ended up going to college and getting her master's and moving to South Korea and China and like just doing a lot of great work. And then my father is from Chicago. And I remember his stories just talking to me about how when a lot of organizations started down there and the community-based element of it, and the foundational principles of that, how it was really about the community and helping people in your community and making sure your community was prosperous, in a positive way. And just his conversations with me when I used to be getting in trouble, like, son, this is not what it's about. This is not what we're supposed to be doing in our community. This is not how we're supposed to be treating our people. And it took me a while to get it and to understand it, but now I do. So those two really mean a lot to me.
How about before then? How much do you know about your ancestors?
I know very little. I know a little bit about my great grandma, but I would say anything past Chicago, I don't really know much.
Okay, and let me ask you to flip the lens to the future. What do you see in the future? This is 2023. As you dream and as you meditate, as you think about, I'm sure you would say the blessings that lie ahead, because you're in the blessing business, right?
Yes, sir.
And
Yes, sir.
so what do you envision as a blessed community, a blessed life for our people 5, 10, 15, 50 years from now? In your mind's eye, what do you see?
Safe, alive, and free. Having a community of safety, community where everyone is alive and understanding and knowing what's going on, and where everyone is free. The burden of drugs and addiction, the burden of gangs and violence, the burden of prison, and the overpopulation and the industrial prison system. Just a vision where everyone is safe, alive, and free, and where we have all of the resources that we need to be able to be prosperous, and a vision of equity. You know, equality is one thing, but how do we make things equitable? Because there should not be these generational gaps in wealth and everything and so on and so forth, to where we see ourselves and myself, you know, when I grew up without a father, right? I said, I'm gonna, you know, me and my dad had a relationship, but he didn't live in the home, you know. So I'll just kind of shift gears a little bit, but that's a part of the vision, is getting fathers in homes, or fathers being able to have custody for their children. So stuff like that, things that we know will make a positive, lasting impact that'll last generations and will reverberate generations, to where eventually one day some of these cycles can be defeated.
We're down to our last minute or so. Take a minute just to invite people to show up, to support, to find out, you know, more about Mad Dads and more about you. And if there's anything you want people to do, let's lay it out there right now.
Thank you. So MinneapolisMadDads.org, that's our website. Minneapolis Mad Dads on YouTube. Follow us on social media, Instagram, all those different places. You'll find us. It's either Minneapolis Mad Dads or Mad Dads Minneapolis. Please check us out. Please support us. We're celebrating our 25th year, October 3rd. So we'll be having a celebration about that. So just be looking out, community, for that. And also, I want to give a shout out to Youth Lens 360. That's who shot our rebrand videos. It's a Black-owned video production company where they specialize in going to young people who might be in the street and offering them a video camera, saying, if you put the gun down, I'll give you this camera to shoot your rap videos. And they employ them as well and teach them how to be their own business owners and entrepreneurs. So that's a really great company. Shout out to them. And just continue to support Mad Dads Minneapolis. And then I also want to just say to the community, you know, we're here, we love you, and we just want to make a positive impact in everybody's lives that we touch.
Jordan Bora Nelson, Executive Director of Mad Dads Minneapolis. Brother, I thank you so much. Keep up the good work. Keep the faith, and do the work. Keep doing it. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. Thank you for being here. We will see you tomorrow. Take care.